Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cams rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Hank's Think Tank. We've got a special guest with us today, and today is going to be really a great show. We have John Hafley, who is a conservative who is running for Montgomery County Judge, Court at Law Number 1. And that seat is presently held by Honorable Judge Dennis Watson. John has 8 years' experience as a commissioned law enforcement officer. He has won a Medal of Valor and the Commendation Medal in that part of his service. He was also a Walker County prosecutor and is now a criminal defense attorney and owner of the Hafley law firm. Finally, he served 8 years as a combat veteran in active duty status in Iraq and Saudi Arabia, winning the Bronze Star, and currently serves as a brigadier general in the United States Army Reserve. Welcome, John. Good to have you here today. And I wanted to say thank you to your campaign committee for facilitating this and getting you in here. That was a great thing, and I look forward to hearing about your service and about everything and just talking about your candidacy for judge. Quite a big step for anybody, but you've got an impressive record and an impressive resume. And so let's begin with your resume to start out with. I mean,
Sure.
it's extensive, and I actually condensed it because I didn't want to take up the entire podcast just going over everything this man has done. So first of all, thanks for your service to the country. We really
Yes, sir.
appreciate
Thank
that.
you and welcome, and we really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, it's a great honor, and I'm glad to share my story.
Fantastic. Okay, so start out with 8 years as commissioned law enforcement officer. Where was that?
So it's a combination of places. So I grew up in a small town in Missouri, graduated from Southeast Missouri State University.
Okay.
And after graduation, went off to what's called the Officer Basic course for the military police. It was down in Alabama. So I did that training first, came back as a reservist, then went to work for the Franklin County Sheriff's Department, a small sheriff's department up in Union, Missouri.
Really?
Was there for a year, worked in the jail, and then got selected to be a police officer in Collinsville, Illinois, which is just right across the river from St. Louis, and it butts up against East St. Louis, Illinois. So it was an exciting small town, 36,000 folks, so it was a mid-sized town, and did that for a couple of years. Married my wife, Dina, who is a Conroe native.
Wow.
Born and raised in Texas, Conroe native, graduated from Conroe High School, grew up in the area here off of Old Houston, 1314, that area.
Okay.
And I made a promise to her that, if she went with me for 2 years to chase my dream of being a police officer, that I would get her back to Texas. So during my time in Collinsville, I applied for the Huntsville Police Department and landed a job in Huntsville and worked there for 4 years.
Really?
I did.
Yeah, so which department was toughest out of all three of those?
They all had their challenges. They all had their different things that made it easier or tougher. I think Huntsville is for a small town, it's very diverse. It has the university. It has all the TDC employees. That's a large population up there. It has different sides of town that have different socioeconomic makeup. So Huntsville is a microcosm of many larger cities. It's just on a smaller scale.
And even the country, I guess.
It edged up to the country, for sure. And it was a great learning experience to work up in Huntsville.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I enjoyed all of them, but Huntsville was my last one, and it was learned a lot from a lot of great hero police officers up there.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you transitioned then from being a law enforcement officer to being a prosecutor, correct?
That's
How'd
correct.
that transition come about?
So that's a great story. I could go on for hours about it, but I will parse it down. So
We got time.
I made the decision. My son was born in 2000, and I was working as a K-9 officer in Huntsville. And I, like many police officers have in the past, I was chasing a crack dealer through the east side of Huntsville. Ran through bushes and briars and just your typical foot chase. Get all cut up and you arrest the guy, he's bleeding, you're bleeding, you make the arrest. his blood's on my uniform, my blood's on my uniform. Happens all the time. Took him to the jail, got home. My shift ended about 4 a.m., got home about 4:30, and my son was in his crib crying when I came home, which isn't uncommon for that age. So I went in, and I went to pick him up. And as I reached for him, I realized I had blood. I didn't do a proper job of cleaning. And I was just like, so he's crying. Now he's screaming because he sees me. I have to go scrub, change, do
Right.
all that. And I think at that point I decided, I enjoy being a police officer, every minute of it. But do I want to do this over and over to my family, to my kids? That was just a decision in my head I made. So I think at that time my calling was, hey, let's explore law school. And I had another officer, Ed Johnson, who was exploring law school at the same time. And talked to him about it, signed up for the LSAT, and the rest, I guess, is history.
Wow.
And then I resigned my commission as a police officer and went to law school and never looked back.
Great.
Yeah.
So how long were you a prosecutor?
So for 2 years. 2 years up in Walker County. So I started, Walker County is, of course, where Huntsville is. So I knew a lot of people, knew folks at the DA's office. David Weeks was the DA at the time. Got hired on, started at the county court of law. They have one in Walker County as a prosecutor, and then worked my way up to the 278th District Court, being the head guy of that court.
Wow.
So in a 2-year period, I went from, my first trial was a DWI, and my last trial was an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
Wow. Do you know how many cases you oversaw during that time? Any idea?
I would say at any given time there's 125 cases in your portfolio, and they rotate often, so I couldn't give you a number.
Thousands, yeah.
Yeah, in the 2-year period, that probably 500 to 600 that you had your eyes on at any given time would be my estimate.
Any real long and drawn out cases?
As a prosecutor, no. None that I can recall. As a defense attorney, for sure. But
Really?
as a prosecutor, there's no really long, drawn out. I think the longest trial we had was the ag assault with a deadly weapon, and it lasted about a week.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Right.
It's quite a jump, though, going from prosecutor to defense. And I know that it happens all the time, but it just seems so opposite coinish to me, because it's both sides of the coin. And I don't know. It almost seems like it would be mentally a difficult transition to make. You're a prosecutor one day, and I don't know how long it took you to transition to defense, but to be a defense attorney, and maybe in the same type of case, it seems like it would be difficult. But on the other end of the coin, the guy knows what the prosecution's going to do, so that helps.
Right, he knows the ins and outs of both sides of the judicial equation, right? Maybe the defense transition came when you opened your own law practice. I don't know.
It did. So, and when you say how long was the transition, it was 1 day. So
Wow.
I ended
That's pretty good.
I ended my career as a prosecutor on a Friday, and the next Monday my office was up and running, and I was getting cases immediately. So you asked about the transition. As you stated, it's you're looking at the case just through a different lens. It's the same law, it's the same constitution, it's the
Right.
same penal code. The uniqueness that I have is I was a police officer. So when you see police officers and you read the report, and you're like, well, that's not exactly
Well,
what
you
you
know
were
if it's
taught.
a good report, an incomplete report,
Correct.
how to approach the
Absolutely.
different things.
So evaluating the case, that's what I always start with, the police report.
Mhm.
And if it's solid, most of them are. We have professionals out there working in Montgomery County and Walker County. You go to the next step, the Constitution. And that's the cornerstone to everything I do as a criminal defense attorney. Did the state follow the Constitution, protect those valuable, inalienable rights that this country has given us? And those are the first 10 amendments. And then you just look at the case and you look at it through that lens. And then you just got to be open and honest with your client. About, hey,
Right.
This is what it looks like. This is what we see. This is the evidence. Here's the discovery. Here's the evaluation of the case. But again, my experience as a police officer and as a prosecutor, I think gives me a slight edge over others.
I would think it'd be a big or a big advantage, just
Right. If I was in trouble, I would look for a guy like this who knows what's going on the other side instead of just having an educated guess about what that might be.
right. So in your criminal defense practice, you said you had some cases that were long and drawn out. Anything specific? And I know you can't mention any names, but anything as far as, we had one case and it just dragged on forever.
Yeah, there's one case, and again, I will protect the client for sure. The client is still alive, and he's in the free world, and I don't want to mention names at all. But it was a case that we had to select 3 juries on, and it was a long, drawn-out process, to say the least. And he was facing 25 to life, and as I stated earlier, I already gave you the ending up front. He's walking in the free world.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's good.
And it was less than 25 years ago, so you can kind of figure out what the end result was. And in our profession as criminal defense attorneys, we always mention, hey, I got a 2-word verdict. Yeah. So there's only 2 verdicts.
Yeah, 1 word and 2 words.
One
guilty,
word and
not
2.
guilty.
That's correct. So got a 2-word verdict on this case, and but you asked long and drawn out. It was absolutely long, drawn out, tedious, detail-oriented, DNA, witnesses, families. I mean, it was a large case.
Exhaustive, I would imagine.
It was.
For everybody involved.
Everyone involved.
So do you find that those specific types of cases, and I don't want to say waste the court's time and money, but do you find that through reform maybe that those could be better streamlined and maybe cost the taxpayer a little bit less? Or is that just a process that has to be gone through to protect the elements of the Constitution?
So the Constitution is pretty clear that you're entitled to a defense, and that defense is a zealous defense, not somebody who's going to come in and just represent you and say, hey,
Fill in the blanks,
Right.
sign here.
yeah, get it done. So you get a zealous defense. And the reason for that is that, this country was formed to avoid a government that was tyrannical.
Sure.
And the framers of the Constitution, the Jeffersons and the Madisons, they wanted to make sure that the people were protected against government overreach. And we still follow that today. So you're saying, could it have been streamlined any faster? It went through the system pretty quickly. It just, different facets of it caused different mistrials along the way that caused it to have to pick the jury 3 times. Conservative, absolutely. Fiscal conservative, absolutely. Dave Ramsey guy. I mean, in my daily life, and I want the government to be more like that than in the way that it is. But Montgomery County does a fantastic job of streamlining cases.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's good. With the extensive growth that we've had, especially lately, I'm sure that a judge's docket would be astronomical. I don't see how we could really make it through it. And hence, that's probably the reason for the redistricting and trying to create a new seat. Correct? Aren't they trying to create a new court?
So they have created a new court. So there's no districting in county court at laws. We are countywide. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now the new one, county court at law 6, are countywide elections. So it's not a JP type of.
Right.
It's everyone in the county votes for it.
Okay.
But they did add a new court last year or 2 years ago. The court that Vince Santini now presides over is a new district court, and they now have a new county court at law that is going to be on this election, on this ballot. So there's 4 open seats for this upcoming ballot.
Wow.
And that's county court at law number 1, number 3, number 4, and the new one, number 6. As the census come out, the people of Montgomery County are going to have to make a decision if they need more courts. They're ran pretty efficiently right now. We got to kind of take out the last couple of years with with
COVID created a major backlog.
It did.
Yeah.
Especially in Harris County where I live.
Yeah. So, and I'm not going to speak on Harris County during this podcast. But yes, I've had cases in Harris County, and it's different than Montgomery County. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if you practice exclusively in Montgomery County.
I don't. The majority of my cases are in Montgomery County and Walker County.
Okay.
I know Walker County still. It's a wholesale player change at the DA's office, but I still know that area really well, and Montgomery County is where I've lived for about 20 years now, and still live here, and my practice is in downtown Conroe.
Okay. And I assume you know Dennis Watson, the presiding judge over court number 1 now?
Sure. I've had multiple cases, had a trial in his court. So, yes, I know him. And, the first thing I did when I decided if I was going to run for judge is individuals in my life were asking, hey, are you going to do this? And, and I don't know what term I want to use. I'm a faith-based or motivated by callings.
Okay.
All those things fit into my life.
Sure.
And as people were asking, and some were saying that, hey, I think you'd be the right person. So of course, I went home, talked to the most important person in my life, which is my wife, Dina, and we discussed it. And she was on board with it. We're empty nesters now. Both our kids are off to college, so it's kind of a different.
Same for me. I like that. That's great. Yeah.
It's a different life now, and so I think the timing, especially with 4 open courts, I think God placed me everywhere that I've done, everything that I've done in life. I think he is the power that guides me. So I gave him a call. So I called Judge Watson and I just wanted to confirm. I've heard rumors that he was retiring, but I didn't know. I mean,
22 years, correct?
That's correct. So it's he's been on the bench a long time. It's an efficient court. It gets through the docket in an efficient manner, and there's absolutely nothing that I would, like any organization, I wouldn't change anything until I'm in there. So some people say, hey, I'm going to make this switch or that switch. That's, that's not me. I've never sat in that chair, so there's no way I would make any changes. Go ahead.
I'm curious, how much of a role does interpretation of law play as a judge? Because I would think it would play quite a big role. And I would think that your interpretation of the law may be a little different than Dennis Watson's, and therefore things may change just as a natural extension of the individual sitting in that seat.
So I think the most important thing about a court is for the defendants or the accused citizens and the attorneys on both sides is predictability. Predictability is very important. How is this court going to rule on these issues? How is this court going to handle dockets? How is this court going to handle time? What is the efficient manner that this court is going to do? So I don't think that has anything to do with interpretation of the law. It's just how your organizational skills. How are they? Then I don't know if judges truly. I think the Constitution, as written, is I guess you could call me a strict constructionalist. And those terms are out there, but I think the Constitution was written for a reason, and I think if you have to dig really deep to interpret its words, then maybe you're going too far. So I'm not sure. I don't want to speak for Judge Watson. I want to speak for John Hafley, and I'm going to follow the Constitution and make sure that it's fairly applied across the board. Liberty and justice for all. I know that's big buzzwords at the end of our pledge, but that's how I believe. I think my record shows that I would do anything for this country, and I think that's for all members of this country.
Right, and it absolutely should be.
Right, we haven't really touched much on your military history, which is quite extensive on its own.
Yep.
The resume here is for education is off the wall. Dean's List, South Texas College of Law, doctorate, jurisprudence, honors. It just goes on and on. The United States Army War College, master's in strategic studies. It just continues and is very impressive. So
yeah, you don't take breaks, do you?
Not a lot of breaks.
Multitasking is quite admirable too.
So I think it's my dad kind of taught me that is you just keep driving forward, keep educating yourself, keep learning, keep chasing your dreams.
Sure.
Don't stop, don't give up, don't let people tell you that you can't. I can clearly say I'm the only candidate who has a master's degree in strategic studies from the War College.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be easy to say.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
Well, I appreciate that. So, and I have to, there are ethical things that I have to get off. I feel as though, and I believe wholeheartedly that I'm an ethical guy, but any reference to my military service, my current rank, my image, the image of the Department of the Army, is by no means an endorsement of the Army or the Department of Defense. They are not endorsing me. They can't endorse me. I wouldn't ask for their endorsement. So I can talk about my service for sure. It's a large part of who I am. But I just want to make it crystal clear to everyone who's listening that don't tie the two together. Don't think that the Army is endorsing me, because they are not. And will
Right.
Yeah, well, the military doesn't endorse political candidates
at all. Correct.
Right.
Yep.
We don't
Yeah,
want
we've had a couple of military guys in here before, so yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
Did you want to continue with that, Mark?
Well, let me just see. Pages 19 through 34, military history.
I'm a little curious about something that's kind of out there, but I'm going to ask anyway. What's the origin of the Hafley name?
So it's a Dutch-German border.
So I thought maybe it was
link. So I've done some lineage tracing through not 21andMe, but the other. I can't think of the name.
Ancestry or something.
Ancestry.com.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
My brother and I kind of did a backwards look, and we want to kind of see it from what we can tell. Hafele, Hafley was transitioned out of the Dutch-German border.
Mhm.
So we're not really sure. We came over from Rotterdam, which was a port in the Netherlands,
Right.
but a lot of Germans from northern Germany moved up and went to Rotterdam to
Right.
head off. So that's kind of where we have traced it back. And our lineage, when we did the DNA, puts us in the middle of Europe.
Cool.
Hank's Dutch.
Right. Yeah, my parents are both from Holland and came here in the 40s and became American citizens. And
Right.
yeah, so I'm kind of a first generation,
Okay.
but we still have a pretty strong European heritage.
Yeah, we
And
trace
so-
back to the early 1800s, I think, when the large German population was coming over.
That's cool.
And settled in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Dutch, which were actually Germans. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we settled.
Yeah.
We traced back to Ireland, and it used to be O'Hogan.
Okay.
And-
Really?
Yeah.
Was it? I like it.
Right.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
so we started the whole illegal immigration thing. My great granddaddy John Hogan stowed away on a shipping boat, ran away from home at 14. He missed the boat going back, so there he was. So there you have it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is a very. These are topics I never thought I'd be talking about.
Right.
Fantastic.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, Mark was touching upon your military experience, and I'm always curious, about guys that have been in Iraq and been in combat.
Mhm.
So combat had to be horrible. I'm sure it wasn't a pleasant experience, but do you think? I don't really know how to get to this. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what is John Hafley's opinion on what's going on with this whole pullout of Afghanistan? And if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. But I'm curious, from a guy who's been on the ground, boots on the ground, So 'cause I haven't served any military experience, and Mark hasn't either. And so, guys like us, we're kind of curious as to how you feel, being that you've been there and you've been in the blood and the guts and all that kind of stuff.
So I can start off by saying you probably got it right when I can't really talk about it because I still currently serve.
Okay.
And I would never second guess the commanders that I report to that are
Okay.
above me, and I wouldn't second guess the commander-in-chief's decisions. There are decisions made at different levels of government,
Mhm.
and I kind of equate it to thinking back to basic. Did I get up and go run at 4:30 in the morning? Yes. Did I want to get up at 4:30 in the morning and run? No. Did I agree with running at 4:30 in the morning? No. But did I do it? Yes. I know that's really simple. Right?
Sure.
I've simplified it way down to that. So you're not
But
going to
that
agree.
makes sense.
You're
Yeah.
not going to agree with everything, but you're going to follow those orders,
Right.
and you're going to follow them to a T. But there is a time to discuss, and then once the operation order is written and cut and it's out there, you're going to follow that order. You're going to look at your piece, and you're going to follow it to a T.
And so your military career began long before your career in law and even law enforcement, right? So
Before law enforcement, yes.
did you join right after high school or right after college? Or?
So in the middle of college, I joined. It's called became a cadet.
Okay.
Right after Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So
Mhm.
you're talking 91, that
Oh, yeah.
time frame.
The first live televised war.
It was. I remember I was, not to go too deep into it, but I was sitting at my fraternity house watching it kick off. And
Yeah, I
was
think
like,
everybody was.
I remember that,
Do you remember
that day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
it
was
was
crazy.
It seems like not that long ago, but then when you look at it, it's like, oof,
Yeah.
that's 2 lifetimes ago almost. so-
Schwarzkopf
yeah.
was a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that whole thing was out of Escon Village in Saudi Arabia. Who knew that, in 20, whatever year that was, I get my years all mixed up, and in 2015, 2016, I'd be at Escon Village where it was all kicked off, and there's a lot of
Right.
plaques and memorabilia
Oh,
out
I
there. So
bet.
it's kind of an exciting full circle.
I was just going to kind of recap the military.
Sure.
And this is a very brief rendition of. So you're currently, if this is accurate, Deputy Commanding General, Operations, 88th Readiness Division. And Brigadier General, Army Achievement Medal, 2 of those, Army Commendation, Meritorious Service ×5,
Wow.
and the Bronze Star,
Mm-hmm.
which in my research told me that was during Enduring Freedom,
Iraqi freedom.
Iraqi freedom.
Yeah, so it was a combination, and so Iraqi freedom became New Dawn during the time frame that I was there.
Okay.
But
And
Iraqi
when was
freedom,
that?
2009.
Okay.
2009. Again, I'm going to give the emphasis that talking about this is not an endorsement from the Army or from the DoD.
Right.
But yeah, that's some good research.
Oh.
Yeah, those are things that are out there. You can find them online for
Yeah.
sure.
One thing I couldn't find was the citation for the Bronze Star. I'd love to hear about that.
Well, I could tell you about it. It's the Bronze Star. I don't want to say there's 2 types, but there's a Bronze Star, then there's a Bronze Star with a V device.
Right.
And the V device is
Valor.
for Valor.
Correct.
This was not a V device. I received the Bronze Star for meritorious service while serving in a combat zone. So what was I doing over there? I was the operation officer for a battalion in northern Iraq. It's called the S3 is the title, but
Right.
it's an operation officer for a battalion. And our battalion had 10 companies underneath them spread throughout what's called MND North, Multinational Division North. The 25th Infantry Division was the division in charge, and we had our troops spread throughout northern Iraq. Area about the size of the state of Georgia, just to
Okay.
give you some perspective. And we did what was called police transition training. So I was dual-hatted as a division asset as the division-wide police transition trainer, and then I was also the S3 of the battalion that had. Our companies were 160 each, roughly, and we had 10 of them, so 1,600, sometimes flexing up to 2,000, just based on different conditions.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
a lot to keep up with.
Sure
a
is.
lot of operations. It is. It was very, very unique because it was police transition, so it was kind of a new doctrine that we didn't have any writings on. So the battalions ahead of us kind of set the stage for us when we showed up.
I would imagine that's probably a cross between military police activities and operations and even prisoners of war, housing.
So our battalion did not do any of the EPW or enemy prisoner of war. We did the police transition training.
Okay.
There were other battalions in theater that worked under different brigades that focused on the enemy prisoners of war at
Right.
Buka, Abu Ghraib, all those prisons that we've heard
Yeah.
about. I didn't serve that portion of it. I was on the police transition side of it.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't want to say it was an even split because I have no idea how many were doing that mission. I had to kind of focus on the police transition portion
Well,
of it.
thank you for that, and
Yeah.
continuing to serve.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So when you landed in Iraq, what was the one thing that surprised you that you didn't expect? Because there had to be something.
So when I landed in Iraq, so I went over the first time. It was called a pre-deployment site survey. Very fancy word, meaning that you go meet with the unit that you're going to replace.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember showing up And, you know, the standard, you flew into Kuwait, you got on a plane from Kuwait into Iraq, and it was a direct flight to our base at Spiker, which is up in the Tikrit area. But we did this spiral landing because you had to keep it in. I mean, they kept you at a height so you wouldn't,
Sure.
the anti-aircraft wouldn't get you. And then the area of Spiker's yay big, so you had to spiral down in a C-130
I've heard about
to come
those.
down to
Yeah.
land. And I wasn't really expecting that. And a couple of guys next to me were even less ready for that. They were throwing up everywhere.
Oh, Lord.
I've always been kind of a thrill seeker, roller coaster rider type of guy, so it wasn't terrible, but it was some anti-gravity moments. It was like,
Yeah.
whoa, this is a...
I'd have been wondering, are we hit?
Well, and that's the other thing. The first time I flew in a helicopter, it was a long, long helicopter flight. So I was just sitting there, and I was a passenger. So there were gunners on each side, and the pilots were flying, and those are heroes on the battlefield for sure. But before they landed, nobody told me about this system where they fire these flares.
Chafe.
Why didn't I know about that, right? That's what I immediately thought, because I was right next to it, and it just, and it was hot, and I thought, we're done. I just got hit.
Wow.
And then I look, and no one else is even reacting to it, and I was like, okay, well, I guess it's normal. So I put it in my notes to the next guy, hey, your first flight, guess what? This is going to happen, and it's normal, so don't panic. But I thought, no, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. First ride.
Yeah. For people that don't know, those are the decoys for the heat seekers and RPGs that are guided too. So.
Yeah, I just wish I'd have read about that before.
I bet.
Yeah. So and incredible technology. I mean, they have heat seeking, and the heat seekers would chase those because they're hotter than the aircraft.
Sure,
Exactly
makes
right.
sense. Yeah.
And I don't think that's secret or top secret. It's out there. I mean, on how those work. So
Yeah.
I've been told that a helicopter ride is a lot like being on a roller coaster with no wheels, so it can do a whole lot more.
Some rides are smooth,
Yeah.
and some rides just weren't. I mean, the air has a lot to do with it. It's 115 degrees, and at different heights you have different pockets, and you can really feel it in a helicopter, just like turbulence on a plane, but just multiplied.
Thermal drafts.
Yeah, it's
Over the desert, even more a bit.
Right.
Okay, let's see here. Let's talk a little bit about the specifics of the election so far. I had a hard time finding almost any information on the election at all, and I think it's just because of everything that's going on with redistricting and all
For sure.
that.
Yeah.
So, has the end filing date come already? I mean,
It hasn't even started.
hasn't even started.
So if you're running for judge, you file 2 documents. One saying that you're going to follow the judicial canon, which I brought with me.
Okay.
Because I bring it with me everywhere I go, because it's
Sure.
very strict. There's like 8 canons you have to follow. Number 5 is for political candidates, and it's a long process of reading, so I don't want to misstep. So I always, if you see me sifting through my paperwork, if you asked a question, I'm looking at the canons.
Okay.
To make sure that I don't, because one of the bad things, it could be a felony, it could be sanctioned by the bar, and I certainly don't want that this early in the campaign. So
Right.
I will refer to those often on any questions that I have to. But no, the simple question that you asked me that I gave you a really long answer to is November is the targeted date where you actually file for the seat that you're going to run for.
Okay.
You can declare it this time, and I think most candidates have, but there could be a last-minute filer for an opponent that you never knew was out there, and everyone has a right to run if
Sure.
you're qualified. So I'm not going out there saying please don't run because I want to run.
How many opponents do you have at this time?
Right now, I believe there's 2.
Okay.
Rumor has it there's 2. One I've met, and I've met him at several events. So his little plaque that he wears says his name and county court at law number 1. So it's a great indicator that he's actually running. The other guy that I heard about, I haven't seen him at any events. So I'm going to say there's 2. There's 3 of us, but officially, back to the original question, there's nobody because we haven't done that official filing. But
Right.
The announcement is there's 2 that I know of.
Subject to change.
Yeah, and you never know how
For
that's
sure.
going to turn out.
For sure. But they could not. That one of them could not run. One of them could decide that they for sure want to run, or there could be a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th person out there who is going to throw their name in the hat.
Yeah.
Yep.
I doubt it'd get that crowded. I mean, it could, but
It could.
that would be interesting.
It would be.
So, September the 1st, constitutional carry came out.
Correct.
From your position as being a law enforcement official and a defense attorney, I mean, this thing seems like it could go either way. What are your thoughts on constitutional carry? I mean, what was your original thought when you heard that, hey, this is going to come together?
Depending on what hat I was wearing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you had an interview with Rowdy, the constable out here.
Right.
And I think he said it best when he said that every time, for police officers, every time they make a traffic stop, they expect the person to be armed.
That assumption's made.
Consider
off
the
bat.
worst case scenario.
Makes sense.
So that's not going to change for if I were still a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets too close into canon number 5 on how I would interpret constitutional carry, but it's a law that's been passed by the legislature, signed by the governor. It's on the books now. I don't think it replaces much of the penal code.
Mm-hmm.
You still can't carry if you're violating other laws.
Right.
So those things weren't carved out there where you can be a bank robber with a gun. You're still going to get charged with aggravated bank robbery, or aggravated robbery, not
There's
aggravated
a lot of
bank
people
robbery.
under that impression, apparently. Well, now just anybody can carry a gun. No.
Yeah,
There's
and
still-
I think
there's
we're
still
going to have
limitations.
I think we're going to have a spike in arrests and cases, but I think as people start to figure it out, pick it up, it'll level out.
It's spelled out
You know.
on a couple of our podcasts as well as the bill itself. I would recommend anybody go read the actual bill.
Right.
It doesn't do away with LTC. In fact, I think LTC is still the way to go.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
You cover all your bases.
Do you remember what
with
bill
that.
number that was? I think it was 1927, wasn't it?
You're going to get me lying.
1227, 1927.
I think it was 1927.
I think
Bill
you're right on that.
1927.
Yep.
So yeah,
But
check
it's out
me out
there.
on that. Let me know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new bills that came out September 1st.
Yeah.
So there's
It's just when they all went into effect.
right, and I will do my like all attorneys do. Well, I don't want to say all, but most attorneys do. There's going to be a continuing legal education on the
Right.
updates, and we're going to listen to the professionals explain it to us, and we're going to learn.
I think there will be a big learning curve on this, and
Every time
some people may learn the hard way, but a lot of it's going to be kind of sorted out. I think the first year for sure.
every 2 years there's a new batch of laws, and we just learn them
Go with
through legislative changes. We just learn them and go with them.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how long is the term for judge if you're
It's
elected?
a 4-year term.
Is it a 4-year term?
It is. It runs at the same time as the governor's.
Okay.
So that's the easiest way. Or it doesn't run at the same time as the president.
Right.
Mhm.
So whichever
So
way you
4
want to look
years.
at it.
Would you still be able to maintain your law practice?
No,
No.
no law practice. I would become a judge and a judge only.
Right. You can see the situation there. He's a
Yeah,
judge.
I can see how it would
One
be
of
a
his
conflict of
attorneys is
interest.
representing one of the people.
But I was just wondering if that practice can still exist, maybe in another county or something else, or
No.
out of jurisdiction somehow.
No, not at all. There's some part-time associate judges that can have a business on the side,
Mhm.
but not a statutory judge like I would become.
Wow.
So it would be the Hafley law firm would be no more.
Wow. And so the criminal court 1 isn't just criminal cases, though. It also does civil matters as well, right?
So it can. Right now, the main focus of County Court at Law 1 is not designated as a criminal court.
Okay.
It's just assigned as a criminal court, which means it handles criminal cases.
Right.
I think County Court at Law 6, when it comes on board, is going to pick up the juvenile portion of it.
Okay.
So 6 is going to handle juveniles and some other things. I haven't done a deep dive into 6 because I'm not running for it. But
Right.
County Court of Law 1 is going to be, I don't want to ever say exclusively, because the Board of Judges could go in and make changes on what court does what.
Okay.
And they have that absolute right to do it based on case numbers. They could redesignate another court as criminal. They could be 4 criminal courts. They could back it down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to those judges on that panel in the county to make that decision.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to kind of close with this. We, started out this podcast actually with a segment on the Texas prison system. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I did.
So what are your thoughts on prison overcrowding and even mass incarceration? You know, because I still have questions about the fact that this country incarcerates more people than any other country in the world. And I don't think we have more crime than any other country in the world. That doesn't necessarily mean we have a problem, but it does mean that there's an issue of one form or another. So what are your thoughts on mass incarceration and just prison overcrowding?
So it may look like I'm going to put on my top hat and my cane and my tap dancing shoes when I answer this question, but I have to be very careful not to violate the canons.
Okay.
In complete honesty, I've never done a deep dive research project into prison populations and overcrowding. Now, cursory reads of it, you're correct. There is a large segment of our population that is imprisoned. But prison reform, that is at the state level.
Right.
So the state would have to make those decisions. These are state courts, these are state, not courts, but these are state prisons, and the state would have to make those determinations. The Board of Pardon and Paroles has their equation table, so to speak, on when people get paroled, how long they serve, when they're eligible, and then they go through that process of parole. And those board members are appointed, and they make those decisions. I really, truly haven't done the deep dive. I do see their, like if a case is going to get X number of years, eligibility for parole is at Y time frame, and I know those equations. But the overcrowding of jails and prisons, yeah, I haven't done the deep dive to give you an educated opinion. I mean, I could shoot from the hip and say, sure, there's a lot of prisoners out there. But kind of the state sets up with the penal code how long people are set to be in prison, and juries and judges sentence people to the number of years that are within that range. So
Right.
the largest range is the felony one. It's anywhere from 5 to 99 or life in prison. That's a pretty wide...
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So who makes those decisions? Juries make those decisions. Depending on how the accused or the defendant makes it, they can make an election that the judge makes that determination.
Right.
But if they're found guilty of a first-degree felony, that's the range of punishment that they're looking at, and that's in the penal code, and that's written by the folks who we elect to go to the state.
Very wide range.
Very wide range, and we don't take those decisions out of the hands of the jurors or out of the hands of the judges. That's where they belong.
Okay.
So, not sure if I got to your question exactly,
I think you did.
but I think it's up to the people to vote for legislatures who vote for people who represent them. If that's an important issue, they need to talk to the elected officials. That's done through the election process.
Sure.
And penal code reform, I mean, if that's what some folks out there want, then they need to contact their state representatives. As a county court at law judge, we would handle, when elected, I will handle misdemeanor cases. In misdemeanor cases, Class A and Class B misdemeanors, the range of punishment for a Class A is up to a year in the county jail, $4,000 fine or both. And Class B is up to 6 months in the county jail, or $2,000 fine or both.
Okay.
So this judge's position would not have a direct adverse or any effect on the population of prisons.
Okay.
Folks that would go through the county court at law, one would, if found guilty and if decided by a judge or a jury, would spend up to a year maximum.
So
in the
it's
county.
Misdemeanor cases only.
Misdemeanor cases.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. I thought it was all.
Nope. Misdemeanor cases. District courts handle felony cases.
Okay.
There's some, hyper exceptions that we won't get into, but for the most part, those are the two.
Yeah, and on the front end, just from looking, those determinations, just for the average guy, are hard to make. So, yeah. Okay. There was one more thing I had, and I cannot remember what it is, and I didn't write it down, but it was something you had touched on. So, to the voters out there, how can they get a better look at John Hafley and what your qualifications are and what your history is and why they should educate themselves and make that vote and cast that ballot for you?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, because think back to the times that you voted in the past. And I don't know you personally on how you research county court at law judges, or you living in Harris County where there's a cajillion county court at law judges. I don't know how people research that position. But I can tell you by going out to the different groups that I've visited that there's not a wide understanding of what a county court at law even is.
Right.
Part two is most people don't know who any of the judges are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying your basic citizen. These are people who are showing up to political events, and they don't know who County Court at Law number 1 judge is.
Right. And it's a lot to keep up with. I mean, when you take it from the lowest, your city council members all the way up, I mean, you'd have to really recall and do research on thousands of individuals.
Absolutely.
That's a lot.
I think
Absolutely.
most people, when they begin their research, it's at the ballot box going, wow, that's quite a list. Okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, civics is a weakness for today's society. It
We're
just
looking at
is.
voter turnout.
Yeah, voter turnout's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be low this time, because I think the governor race is going to be pretty heated.
I think it will, too.
Based on the tea leaves that I'm reading. I mean, I can't say what it's going to be. I
would
can't
have to
predict
agree with that.
Yeah.
So that's going to get more voters out there. But are they, when they get to page 17 or whatever page out the County Court at Law number 1 is at, are they going to be educated? So you asked, how could you educate yourself on my qualifications?
Correct.
Hafleyforjudge.com is a great first start. You can Google Hafley for Judge, and it'll take you to that place, take you to that space. Go to your local events. There's Tea Party events. There's Republican women events out there all the time. There's 6 or 7 of them in the county now. There's one here in East Montgomery County, Women Republican Group.
Right.
They will help you meet candidates, get educated on what their qualifications
I've
are.
dealt with them. They're a very effective group.
They are, and I went to a meeting in September. No, this is September. In August, I went to a meeting, and it's a great group of folks out there. So I would ask you that, hey, go look at all the candidates, get involved, ask the question. There's a section in my webpage. If you have a question, you can send it directly to me, and I'll answer it within 24 hours.
Okay.
I got my first hate text already, so it's
Did you really?
but that's okay, because
Right.
that's somebody who was questioning why I am what I am.
That's an opportunity right there.
It is an opportunity.
Sure.
And at that point I wasn't looking for that vote based on the hate message that I got, but it's just hey, I am who I am, and this is why. So Hafley Law, not Hafley Law, I'm selling a law firm now, sorry.
That's okay.
Hafleyforjudge.com would be a good source. I am having a kickoff meet and greet October 5th. It's going to be at B&E Winery in Conroe, the one that's off of Fraser as you go north past Loop 336. So anybody out there listening who wants to really get to know who I am can meet me. My phone number's online. My cell phone number's online. You can call me anytime. You can shoot a text to me anytime if you have questions. I am an open book. I'm not ashamed. A little bit more about me. Been married 25 years to the same wonderful woman who convinced me that Texas is the best place in the world to raise family, and she was right. I have 2 outstanding kids who are in college. We live on 15 acres. Every morning I feed horses and pigs and chickens and goats and sheep and lambs and you name it. Old McDonald's jealous of me. We have so much out there. So that's who I am. If you want to know more about me, you can call me. I'll answer the phone unless I'm in court or unless I'm with a client or unless I'm doing on a plane, obviously. But I will get back with you within 24 hours. So those are the places you can go.
That's great. It's a lot more than you get from some candidates, too.
Yeah, and I'm an open. I think I'm an open book. I'm trying this new pamphlet with a QR code.
Okay.
We're handing those out. I've met some people who can't stand the QR code, and I think that's all back to COVID because they want to hold the menu and read it. They don't want to read it from their phone. But there's some people who love it. So I've got both, where you can hold it physically and you can read about who I am and what it is I stand for. and then or you can QR code it and go to my
Okay.
website.
About how many voters are there now in Montgomery County?
Oof, that's a great question. Yeah, so I did that, and I didn't bring the research with me. So my goal.
I know it's a lot.
It's a lot. The population is.
I learned that the hard way, actually.
The population now at over 600,000.
Yeah, it's huge.
So
Yeah.
I registered voters. Obviously, we're a Republican county,
Mhm.
predominantly Republican county, and judges have to declare party, and I've been a lifelong Republican, lifelong conservative, son of a Methodist minister, so
Mhm.
raised in the church. So the Republican Party has the dominating party in Montgomery County, and not to talk deep party politics, we got to work hard to keep it that way in
Sure.
in Montgomery County, because there's bleed over from Harris County that you saw what happened in the last election. You saw wholesale player changes of
Mhm.
judges to include the
Right.
county judge down there, and
Yep.
not to get on a political stump speech overall, but we got to protect our conservative values in this
Right.
county.
But they're definitely under attack, and they're not going to stop.
Correct on both fronts.
So back in 2020, I ran for a board position for the East Montgomery County Improvement District. And it was an interesting run because it was supposed to be a quick campaign. Started, I think, in February. The election was supposed to be in May. COVID hits, and they postpone it and throw us into the general election. And so we went from having about 2,000 estimated voters, registered voters, just for that MSED footprint, to the entire gamut of Montgomery County.
Mhm.
And that's how I learned. Yeah. And so my campaign actually got stretched out a little over a year. It was tough.
That was
It was
the birth of your podcast, Hank's Think Tank.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. One of the promises that I had made, I was doing some videos online. I said, I'm going to put together a podcast, and I'm going to provide as much truthful information to the community that I can. And so that's how this whole thing came about.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate the
So-
opportunity to come out here. The number one question that's asked of me that wasn't asked today is, why do I want to be a judge? And I think back to, you guys are roughly my age. I don't want to play
I'm
it once.
58.
So you're roughly my age, and you may remember when Roger Mudd asked that question to then presidential candidate Ted Kennedy,
Mhm.
when he asked, why do you want to be president? And the answer was probably the most atrocious answer in modern politics.
I've heard this and I can't remember it.
He didn't answer it. He stammered, he stuttered, he went through this litany of things. So, I mean, just straight out, why do I want to be judge? I feel as though everything in my life has a purpose. The position of judge and the decision for run for judge is part of this purpose-driven life. So I've always had the motivation and determination to be a judge, but like most things in life, it's all about timing.
Sure.
And the timing now is right. God's placed me in a position to run for judge, and I made that decision.
Yep, the history has occurred to create the future that is calling for you.
Yep, absolutely. The powers in my life are calling me to run for judge, and now I need those powers to be transitioned into people who believe in who I am and what I'm running for.
Right.
Without that, I'm asking for Montgomery County to hire me. I'm asking for
Absolutely.
the voters
Yeah,
of
I
Montgomery County
understand.
to hire me as a judge, and the only way to do that is to vote for me. So
Right.
when the primaries come, I hope you, everyone listening, I hope you go to my website and you make a decision. And it's based on facts.
And he's on Facebook too.
Yes, I am on Facebook, and my Twitter account is starting. Got a little Twitter fear from.
Oh, yeah.
There's some Twitter biases from the past, but I'm getting it open, and I
Right.
can communicate through Twitter also.
Great.
Fantastic.
Yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I've had a
Well,
good
thank
time.
you.
It's been a good conversation.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, John Hafley. Remember that name? He's more than likely going to be our next Montgomery County judge. And that's court number 1. It's county court number 1. John, it's been great having you on.
All right. Well, I
And,
appreciate it.
Mark, do
It's
you
been
have anything you
fantastic.
want to close with? Any
Well,
questions, comments?
I think we need more people like you going for these positions in government. Transparent history of service to the country, service to your family, and I admire that. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's definitely important to get involved in your community and be a component part of what's going on here. Guys, if you've subscribed to the channel in the past month or so, we appreciate it. Things are looking real good. We've got a full docket ourselves, if you want to call it that, and we're kind of booked up all the way through December, and things are looking great. We've got a couple slots we can fill in, so we're going to try to do that too. And got some good guests coming, some interesting podcasts, some more comedy also, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. And until that time, we'll be out. All right.